I remember thinking to myself, what would I tell my younger self or that 8-year-old when I felt my power, when I stepped into my own story? So I would offer that to your listeners. What would you tell your younger self now? What do you owe her in terms of being your bravest, brightest, highest self?
Welcome to the Architect My Life podcast. I'm your host, Shlachter, CEO of MGS Global Group. We provide on-demand drafting services to overwhelmed architects and design firm owners. In this podcast, we talk to successful women firm owners about challenges to running a business while balancing their lives. My company's mission is to help architects and designers maintain a healthy work-life balance. Architect My Life is where we learn how to achieve your goals through genuine stories and conversations with successful women in the industry. Hi everyone, our guest this week is Jing Lauengco. As a young Manila-born Filipina with a colorful imagination growing up in Ohio, Jing Lauengco saw the power of words, cross-cultural connections, and creative storytelling at an early age. Jing's passion for diversity, design, and digital storytelling grew as an award-winning brand strategist, chief optimist, and female founder of Jing Inc., her design and business consultancy, Other Brown Girl OBG, her social impact blog for modern, multicultural women and next-gen Other Brown Girl leaders and entrepreneurs, and her podcast, Next Thing with Jing, exploring new chapters, new adventures, and real life-work-life comebacks. Entrepreneur, former design firm founder and ad agency partner, Jing is currently completing a nonfiction book about traveling to the Philippines to trace her family roots while taking a tour through breast cancer. Jing serves on Literary Cleveland's Board of Trustees, shaping DEI community programming, and OPAL, Ohio Progressive Asian Women Leadership, a female-led social justice coalition building intersectional feminist advocacy. Featured in Cleveland Magazine's Top 10 Women Who Inspire Us in Cleveland, Cleveland's Most Interesting People, Creative Thinker, Story Club Cleveland, and Idea Stream's The Sound of Ideas, Jing teaches women and girls how to find their voice and design positive, self-empowering identities in their own words and own way. Jing's living the dream, inspiring the next generation of modern women and creative entrepreneurs. I'm so thrilled to talk to her today. Welcome to the show, Jing.
Kumusta kayo? Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here with you.
Same here. So I really can't believe this is actually happening. So guys, this month is Filipino Heritage Month in October. So I want to, all of my guests this month are Filipino and Jing is one of them. So Jing, tell me, what's your favorite Filipino dish?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for the important example and work that you do in the architectural field and creative entrepreneurship field. And I am delighted that I get to be on your podcast and learn more about you and share our heritage together. So this really means a lot to me. So thank you, Aya.
Of course.
So what is my favorite Filipina dish? So we just had a very fun event. Again, Aya was remarkable and so kind and gracious. My favorite dish is pancit, my mom's Filipina rice noodle dish, and it really represents long life for birthdays. And the way my mom makes it is with carrots and cabbage and chicken. And I remember being in college, I would smell it walking in the door, and it always reminded me of home. But also lumpia, Filipino egg rolls, which a friend of ours, Jenica, also made at this get-together. So those are my two favorite Filipino dishes.
I think it's the most popular too.
I think you're right.
Another Filipino-related question. What do you love most about being Filipino?
Oh my goodness. That everyone feels like family, like Aya. I think that it's funny because I am a brand strategist. So a lot of times, a lot of the work that I do, Aya, is centered around brands and storytelling. And we're all born a brand. And in some ways, being Filipina is a brand. I feel that, and we've talked about this, we've connected on a lot of times people think that if you're Filipina, you might be in medicine. Or my father was a doctor, my grandfather was a doctor. So sometimes there are brand extensions to being Filipina or Filipino. But what I really love the most about Filipino culture is there's a graciousness and kindness. And I believe that there is humility and a humanity that comes with being Filipino. So I'm very proud to be part of this heritage and celebrating it with you today. And I'm always excited to meet Filipinas. And I know we connected because we're creative entrepreneurs, which is sometimes outside the beltway for some within the Filipino community.
And especially in Cleveland, where there are two major hospitals here. And
That's right.
most of the Filipinos I meet are either nurses or doctors.
Right.
And when I saw that, I'll tell you how I met Jing later on, but I was so excited to finally meet a creative entrepreneur in Cleveland. So, about being creative, tell me how or who's the most influential person or experience that led you to become a creative and starting Jing Inc.
Sure. Well, family is important to Filipinos, especially the immigrant journey and the way that we arrived here. So I think also Filipinos are very welcoming in general. There's a very hospitality driven focus. And you and I talk about this. That's why there's so many overseas Filipino workers. There are a lot of Filipinos, essential workers that were really the steel backbone of the COVID situation, a lot of nurses. So the person that really is most influential to me is and was my father, who was a doctor. He came to the United States when he had his residency, when the immigration policies were more open and people were more welcoming. And so he really was a dreamer. And so I think that's what we all are as entrepreneurs, right? You're betting on your own potential. And so I still think about him in my journey and how brave he was to leave his homeland, his family, his culture, to start a new life, both personally and professionally. So he is the most important and significant. He is the most important and significant person in my life, and he continues to inspire me. And I'm sure we'll talk about this a bit more too.
That's awesome. So tell me, I know Jing is super creative. She had a bunch of side gigs when you were in high school, right? She's a creative. She owns Jing Inc., which you'll talk about. But can you please tell us your story in Cedar Point? This is off topic, but I think it's important.
You are so funny. So Cedar Point, for those of you that are not from the Midwest, it is a roller coaster park, and it's been around for 150 years on the North Shore of the Great Lakes. And in college, I actually applied to be a caricature artist. I was the first female caricature artist, actually, way back in the day. And that was the first time where I learned to hustle, Aya.
Oh,
so
tell us.
We would draw caricatures, and the park guests would walk by, and I have very sweet memories of this park. So during college and right out of high school, you would basically go during the summer, live in the dorms, and it was like a college B movie where it was so much fun. And so I was the first female caricature artist with all my guys. They're like brothers to me. And so they actually hired me at this sort of tryout at college because I think I was the loudest and could hustle. And so basically what would happen is people would circle the park, and I would basically say, "Hey, come on over here. Let's get a sketch." And so it was a way to interact with this wide cross section of people. And really it's around figuring out what their story is on paper, their character, but also connecting with them in a way and conversing with them. So that was a very valuable lesson, learning how to hustle, learning how to read a crowd, respond, knowing what happens when something went south. It was funny because I think this is the best litmus test when you're drawing on a hot summer day. Your sweat is like, down your cheek, and there's a crowd of people behind you, and you're drawing
on the spot
live. Yeah. So there's sort of an improvisational aspect to it too. So I think a lot of entrepreneurship is around connecting and hopefully being your highest, truest expression of yourself. So I would say that really taught me a lot, but you're so funny. I was not expecting that question, but thank you. It was a galvanizing, defining moment because it's almost like you're on stage live every day for 8 hours a day. And you would have to it was like, talk about critiques, right? Every time you're doing something, you had to defend or read, there's a lot of emotional intelligence with that kind of thing. But again, that really helped, I think, launch me into entrepreneurship.
That's a great story. So I saw Jing live in action in one of our events where you were asked to do a live caricature in Beechwood, which we will talk about. And it was very impressive.
Thank you. Again, thrown off guard. I was not expecting that, but thank you.
Jing is amazing, everybody.
Oh, you're so gracious.
Anyway, let's talk about Jing Inc. What is Jing Inc. and what do you do exactly?
Sure. So Jing Inc. is my own consultancy, and it's built around brand building essentially, but it also dives into storytelling or integrates storytelling. So I do a lot of different kinds of things based on interest. Since we are in the architectural space, I will talk a little bit about that because I'm a huge fan of Aya and everything that she does. And I was so excited when you linked in actually and started to learn more about you. So I'm a huge fangirl of architects. I'm very fortunate to have been involved in several projects, one including Callison RTKL. There is a group here, American Greetings, and I helped to open up their world headquarters a few years back. I did all the campus wayfinding and also their large 90 by 14 foot executive lobby wall. So that was really fun. Again, it was sort of we knew that particular lobby wall would be a main focal point outside of the the key fob when you would get in. So we knew that the different associates would come twice a day at least, coming in and out, right? And so that was based on a storytelling project that I had concepted, and I actually included a large Filipina, a mural,
That's
or actually
great.
an Asian person. This is way back when, but that particular project was really fun. It was, again, through Jing Inc., and I did a survey to ask all of the associates worldwide what happiness, laughter, and love meant to them, which was at the time I was working on the mission, vision, values with the corporate communications group and change management. So it was a very exciting time, and I'm sure this happens with all architectural projects. There's a long arc to that project. So it was really fascinating and fun and in-depth, and I was able to create this storytelling wall that continues to live on. We worked with artists from Asia creating dimensional flowers and sculptures. We also worked with local artists doing additional sculptures. I think there were 2 or 3 photo studios. So we're really trying to embody the creative expression. And it was really a love letter to the city, but also to the history of American greeting. So I love architects. It was so much fun. A lot of moving parts and parallel streams that are deepening, widening in real time. I really am impressed by all architects who are able to think through this long range project and be very tenacious about keeping the integrity and the vision and the passion alive for something like that. I also did some work with AECOM. At that time, it was for a health tech center, and it was really exciting, and it was right before the pandemic. And so was able to look at the way that they built out a makerspace, and that was actually with some insights and strategy from IDEO, a Hive space. So again, big fan of architects. I believe it starts so much with strategy and the design experience. What is the takeaway, from a me space to a we space? There's lots of ways to think about contextually how to work within. There's a lot of ways to think about how we work in the new now and ways that we are evolving, especially as things are starting to blend in the virtual and physical and digital space.
That's perfect. And right now people really need creatives, graphic designers, and strategists like Jing to make the concept whole, not just architecture, but integration and collaboration with other consultants and vendors. And I saw Jing's work. It was in a book, right? For the American Greetings. Later on, we'll drop the show, some of your links so we can see all your amazing work. But one of the things that I know about Jing that's really amazing is that she really knows how to sell, pitch, and close. And I always say this about creative entrepreneurs. We were taught how to master our craft, but not taught how to grow or run a business. But can you share with us how you're able to get all these major clients? What's your strategy? Or can you just give us advice on how to close bigger deals?
Well, I appreciate that. I think the one thing that is helpful and is true for anyone is what is your only factor? What is the thing that only you can do or say? And so sometimes people call it the superpower. Sometimes people call it your X factor. What's the one word or the one thing that people think of when they work with you? So as it relates to selling and closing, a lot of my work is around brand building and storytelling, but storytelling in the form of story sharing and story connecting. How does your client see themselves in the story that you're creating together? So in many ways, you're connecting first, and then you find a way to convert in terms of, would you be open to XYZ, right? There's an openness, and that takes the pressure off, I believe. So again, I think this is how I met. When I met her, I'm just thinking, how can we collaborate? I don't know what it is or what it looks like, but can we collaborate together, please? Yes. And we have in many capacities, actually, around leadership and entrepreneurship. So what I can say is, in terms of selling, a lot of it is sharing first, then connecting, then seeing if there is a conversion. That's what I would say. Because a lot of times it's connecting the dots with people and seeing where it makes sense, and then also seeing how you can offer help. So I would say, and this is a big thing that you talk about, Aya, is how do you serve? How do you serve versus selling, right? And I think, to me, again, coming back to the Filipino traits, selling for me feels very unnatural from our family's standpoint. My father was a doctor, so he was around helping. So if I can think about it from the standpoint of helping and elevating, then it's easier. It takes off that sort of sales lens, right? So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, that really is very. I also do that. I didn't like to sell before, so I have this favorite quote that it's, I think, by J. Abraham. If you have a product or service that can benefit other people, it's our moral obligation to share it. Yeah. So I've switched my mindset to sharing instead of
yes,
selling.
I think we've talked about that. Absolutely.
Yes.
And it's one of those things too with marketing and branding, and it gets kind of murky, right? I've read, I think it was Marty Neumeyer from Brand Flip and Brand Gap. Marketing is getting the word out. Branding is the word. So what are the words that we use to describe ourselves and to connect to others? And really, brands are belief systems, and so are stories. So as we talk about entrepreneurship, I think we're all a story within a story, a brand within a brand. And we're really looking at, when we look at that peer landscape, who are you and who are you not? Who you are not is actually extremely valuable, extremely valuable. So this is something that I do through Jing Inc. And we've been teaching other folks this, but we go through this sort of design mapping matrix around positioning, your only factor. And I like to call it the 5WH approach, which is who, what, where, when, why, then how. A lot of times people start with, oh, I want a website, or, oh, I really need to do this newsletter. But I really offer to my clients this 5W and H approach. Who are you? Who are you not? What do you do? What's the value? Let me make sure who, what, where. Where do people need you the most? And when? When do you come at this sort of rising action point? Who, what, where, when, why, how? How are you going to transform their lives? What does it look like, your business, your consulting, from a before to after transformation? What does that look like? And then how are you going to do it, right? So that's just something to think about in terms of, again, selling. We're looking at their experience and their journey, and we're meeting them where they are. And we're almost like a guide on the side. So I don't want to be the expert, but I do want to share my experiences, and hopefully we're going to be able to have them see their story and their voice and feel more invested in the process.
So I love what you just said, because you just added a lot of value to the creative industry and creative industry professionals. A lot of people think that because you're creative, you can just design a logo. And that's really undervaluing a lot of the work that graphic designers and creatives have, especially now when you can just get a logo for $6. So this whole 5W approach,
5WH, yes.
WH approach is really important, because you have like years of experience. That's one of our ways to value ourselves as professionals in the creative industry.
Yes.
By sharing our potential clients and customers the holistic approach.
Yes.
And that's really great what you just said.
Thank you. And really, architects do this all the time. I mean, this is an immersive, sensory, multidisciplinary experience, which is why I'm such a fan of architects, because you really have to think strategically with business, the long-term impact. I mean, this is really creating a legacy. It will exist long beyond us. And so I think that is the really powerful thing about architects. And that's why I love to be around architects like Aya in this category, because it really is thinking about the urban landscape, the impact both for social good and social change. It's also at scale around sustainability. So we need more architects like Aya, more people like her audience who believe in the greater good and doing things with intention, but also innovation. So I really commend Aya for the ecosystem that she's created, her leadership. I mean, just everything, really. And
thank you, Jing.
of course, don't genuinely. And I'm really touched that she has me on for Filipino-American Heritage Month. And I want to say that I'm drawn to Aya's leadership and her design prowess. She happens to be Filipina and she happens to be a female founder, which is a bonus, right? So I think we first lead with design excellence and our story. And I hope that you out there listening can think about your story and practice it, like put it in play, go to as many networking events and just keep evolving, because in essence, it's a living brand. It's a living story. And that's another thing is I feel like sometimes people they don't want to show up or share themselves. I know that was me, with social. And sometimes that's another part of being an entrepreneur is just putting yourself in rooms, in situations that you've never been in before to test drive these trial balloons. And I'm very grateful that I and I are doing some of those right now, which are really exciting.
We'll talk about later.
We will.
But I also wanted to share a story about how I met Jing. So my husband sends me this article from Cleveland magazine that you were featured as one of the most interesting people for winning a civic pitch. And can you talk about the article? But before that, I was so happy to finally meet a Filipina or, read about an amazing Filipina. And I connected with her through LinkedIn and we became friends. But yeah, tell me more about the civic pitch that you won.
Sure.
And, because of that, you started Other Brown Girl,
Yes,
and also
yes.
the next thing with Jing podcast. So yeah, Jing has a lot going on. So talk about your award.
Oh, happy to, because it connected me to you. So in 2019, and I know we have a lot of female founders out there listening, so please take care of yourself. I found out that I had stage 1 breast cancer. And so I went and took care of myself and went through a series of tests. And during my recovery, I had actually launched this idea, this story that I could not stop thinking about. And so we've talked about this. In 2017, I went back to the Philippines for the first time and last time to see my mom's childhood home before the world turned. And so I'd been thinking about this for a long time, and I started this blog called Other Brown Girl, which is a multicultural storytelling community that I created based on writings that I had done. And so I didn't think anyone would read it. I didn't really quite know what would happen, but I put it up, published it mainly for my half brown kid, who sometimes forgets he's Filipino. And so I was recovering and being an entrepreneur and someone who, like Aya, likes to do lots of things and likes to work. I didn't know what my next thing was. And so I started to apply for grants to be able to think about new ways of diversifying income and revenue streams. So I'm very fortunate to have won a grant. It was through the Cleveland Leadership Center, Citizens Bank, Citizens Make Change, and the Cleveland Foundation. So I was a finalist in social good or social change, but I actually won for technology and innovation. It was a award called Technovation. And so I think at the time there were 60 pitches from around the city. And so fortunately, Other Brown Girl won. And so I was able to create a podcast based on the funds and also do some youth programming. So it's been really, really fun. But that's how I met Aya. I think I was I got press on it locally, and then in fact it's almost like a Shark Tank. You had to go and share your idea for 5 minutes and record it because it was during the pandemic, so it was all virtual. And so I think, ironically, because of the pandemic, it got more coverage because it was in this virtual space. And actually, I should say this as well. Uh, I took a literary Cleveland class and a virtual class for my at the time, and that's actually how I started to think about Other Brown Girl and the name Other Brown Girl.
It is a blog, correct?
It's a blog, yes, but now it's actually expanded into different online and offline experiences for the next generation of social change agents, multicultural makers, and I'm very grateful to say it's expanded and evolved into something I never could have imagined, frankly, connecting me to women and leaders like Aya and other creatives that are doing things that might be outside of a typical corporate capacity, and we are creating, hopefully, and designing real lives and work lives that look more like us. And a lot of it, Other Brown Girl, is more around, for me, this idea of what does it mean to be other brown and girl today because of all the social upheaval that we've all experienced. I think it made me pause and really think about, where do we as Filipinas, fit in the diversity conversation? Where do our children who are now second generation or third generation, how are they going to fit in this diversity conversation? And also, there were stories out there in the news, and I didn't feel it was in alignment or true as it relates to our immigrant journeys. And so Other Brown Girl was this opportunity to be able to craft a new narrative, at least for myself and for our family, and have these broader discussions. So that's a long answer, but that's how we met. And it's actually informing a lot of the work that I'm doing lately with you around how do we make sure that there is vision, voice, and visibility around representation for brown and Black girls that are rising. And so Other Brown and Girl, to me, it's fluid, right? And some of it too is, as we get older, depending on the season of our life or career, I try to remember what I would tell my younger self. So there's a picture of myself in this poncho that my mom made. I still remember I had these dark denim blue jeans, and I had a strawberry patch on my knee from bounding out in the world and being a tomboy, right? And just doing all the things. And I remember thinking to myself, what would I tell my younger self, or that 8-year-old, when I felt my power, when I stepped into my own story? So I would offer that to your listeners. What would you tell your younger self now? What do you owe her in terms of being your bravest, brightest, highest self? When I had cancer, I had a lot of time to think in bed. I did not want to be seen. I didn't want anyone to see me or know what was happening with me. But then I felt a duty, as you said, to serve, to share with people. And I'll say it now, it was a 3D mammogram and a second opinion. I trusted a small voice inside my heart, and that is really what saved me. So again, I offer to your listeners to trust your instinct, know your story matters, and think about that younger self and also your older self. I would also say that as a bookend. What would you tell your younger self? And we moved my mom back with us. She's 80 and feisty and very Filipina from San Francisco. And so I see her at this season of her life, and I think about it often, like, what would I tell my older self? And so that allows each of us to be braver. And I didn't know how the cancer journey would end. I still don't. You really live with it, not behind you, but beside you. And so I've always, since then, told myself, I want to go out like a comet. I want to go out like a comet and just shine as bright as I can, even in the dark times. And I offer that to your listeners. I hope they can do that too.
Thank you for sharing your story. And I can attest to how amazing Jing is and your mom.
Oh,
we went to your event in the, what was that gallery?
Breakforth Studio.
Breakforth Studios. Can you talk about that? But before that, talk about it. And
Okay. Sure. No, and she's so modest and gracious. She really helped me plan it and really think through the experiences. And I really am grateful to Aya to be part of this special time. She's like family. So I started, since again, a lot starting with story and strategy. So I won that first grant, the Accelerate pitch. And then I won another grant, an Equity in the Arts Fund. So I use that as a template for grant pitching, which is something I haven't done before. But again, hopefully forcing myself to do different things. I did win another grant thanks to Spaces Gallery and Cuyahoga Arts and Culture. And so it was the Urgent Art Fund, which basically wanted to celebrate and highlight work that needs to be done now in the moment that we find ourselves. And so I won this grant, and I did a digital storytelling in the new now, where I basically took all of these photos from my childhood and from my mom and dad's, and it was celebrating our Filipino culture. So with my Lola and Lolo, showing my grandparents and really thinking about the sacrifices and generations that came before me, all the stories that came before me. And we had this at Breakforce Studio. We had Jenica Gonzalez, who is amazing, a designer and cook. She says she wants to, what is it? She's a wannabe Iron Chef, but she is an Iron Chef. Let's just say that. She brought egg rolls, lumpia, delicious, and my mom made pancit. And it was really a way to celebrate our heritage. So again, that was just a dream of mine to have that come together. And I was so grateful that Jenica and Aya and myself were able to share our heritage with our friends and family.
I was really happy to be there because I miss the Philippines, and I was born and raised in the Philippines. I moved here when I was 18. So when I walked into the space and saw a lot of the Filipino food and the dried mangoes and the candy and Jing's photos, very cute childhood photos with her parents, and your family photo, which also my family had the same kind of photo in the 70s. So I felt like I was transported to my grandma's house in the Philippines, and I really enjoyed the event. So thanks for inviting me. Also, Jing has a podcast. What's it called? Jing.
Next Thing with Jing. And I also want to put a little plug for Aya. I'm on the board of Literary Cleveland. I was very grateful to be asked to serve on the board. And we recently did a podcast panel at the Downtown Cleveland Public Library for Incubator, which is a free writers conference. Check it out. And Aya was gracious enough to be one of the panelists on the podcast panel. And so we both connected through our podcast, which is another common thread. And I'm glad that we were able to be in this moment together. But yes, Next Thing with Jing is a podcast that I had concepted. I started blogging Other Brown Girl, and I noticed that I could talk faster, and I loved conversations. So the grant funding that I received from the Leadership Center, I did invest in creating this podcast with Amy Guth, who is a strategist out of Chicago. She does tech and business for specifically women, Crane Chicago business. We concepted this. And so it launched in February of this year. And I'm excited that Aya will be a guest on my podcast, but it's about next chapters and new adventures in the new now. And new now can be so many things, right? For all of us, is it this sort of fuzzy, murky post-pandemic world? For me, it was post-cancer. And so it's also recognizing that now is now is now is now. It never ends, just like our stories and just like our brands. So that's what Next Thing with Jing is about.
Oh my God, I love Jing. Can you tell? Okay, so Jing, tell me, what are your current and exciting projects that you're working on right now?
Oh my goodness. Well, I can say I'm very tickled to be able to work with Aya on a couple leadership ideas that I've been hatching. And one of them was teaching at this wonderful program called Beechwood Marketing. And we actually met with 40 rising entrepreneurs and young leaders. And I asked Aya if she could share her talk about values and being a serial entrepreneur. And so I have been very fortunate to be working with their fantastic marketing director, Greg Perry. And essentially what it is helping these rising leaders design a life that they love and design their future. And so I created the speaker series with digital storytellers and creative female founders to inspire the next generation with this entrepreneurial mindset and lens. So we help them think through, with our friend Ayman Ali, their networking look, to be able to think about their brands, their digital footprint. We had a career coach, Kathy Posner, who's amazing. We did some LinkedIn profiles, again, at the high school level. And then we ended in a culminating event with a speed networking with, I think there were 40 executives from the business community and entrepreneurial entrepreneur community, and we were able to put some of the class workshops into practice and have the students shake hands, talk about their future plans, and really do something that felt real world. So that's really exciting. Another thing that we're doing is we are starting to explore and get some traction on Evolve, which is essentially, we feel, something that's very needed. It's an accelerator for women who are ready to take their game to the next level. So that's personally and professionally. And it's really perfect for corporate retreats, summits, professional development days, mentoring. We are super excited to have 4 strong female founders, Aya being one of them, from MGS Global, Eamon Ali from Fashion Talks, Nikkei Olabisi Green from NOLA Movement, and myself. And we will be speaking and sharing our perspectives around, for Nikkei, the wellness journey, for Eamon, really designing your highest professional presence. With Aya, she's going to be mentoring all women at every point in their journey around where they are as entrepreneurs. And I will be starting to explore with you this idea of storytelling and design mapping and how do we continue to evolve. So that's actually what I'm most excited about. And we have a couple of really exciting conversations with different folks in the community, and we're going to take this on the road nationally and internationally.
That is so exciting. So, Jing, one last question. Where do you see yourself in 3 years?
Dun, dun, dun. Oh, my goodness. Where do I see myself in 3 years? I see myself continuing to deepen and expand my belief that anything is possible for myself and others, other brown girls. I continue to hopefully explore. Well, I don't know. I'm hoping that continuing. Wait, let me think about this. Sorry. My goal is to be in beta mode, constantly, to not be afraid to be in rooms where I never found myself, to wander and wonder what is possible for myself and other people, including clients and including my peers. So that's what I hope, though that's abstract. Let's do a podcast in 3 years and see where we both are. But I'm really excited about this next generation of leaders, especially social change agent leaders, other brown girls. And I'm excited to have this conversation and share the space with you, Aya.
Thank you so much, Jing. You are an inspiration to me and to other brown girls out there. And I really enjoyed our conversation.
I thank you for the work that you do and continue to do. And also, I really appreciate how you really look holistically at wellness. And that is part of your business model. And that is one of the reasons why I admire you and am inspired by you and your creativity. I love how you design a real life and work life that you love as examples for all of us. So again, congrats on all the amazing things that you're doing. I'm excited to see you on your journey and next thing as well.
That was Jing Lauengco of Jing Inc., Next Thing with Jing podcast, and the other brown girl. Thank you for listening to this podcast. And if you're still around, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please take a moment to review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. We're open to know what you'd like to see covered in future episodes, so don't hesitate to reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, or be part of the Architect My Life community.